overcome that fear. I have no such motivation. I can't have. I'm a witcher, an artificially created mutant. I kill monsters for money. I defend children when their parents pay me to. If Nilfgaardian parents pay me, I'll defend Nilfgaardian children. And even if the world lies in ruin, which does not seem likely to me, I'll carry on killing monsters in the ruins of this world until some monster kills me. That is my fate, my reason, my life, and my attitude to the world. And it is not what I chose. It was chosen for me. You're embittered, she stated, tugging nervously at a strand of hair, or pretending to be. You forget that I know you, so don't play the unfeeling mutant, devoid of a heart, of scruples, and of his own free will in front of me. And the reasons for your bitterness I can guess and understand. Ciri's prophecy, correct? No, not correct, he answered icily. I see that you don't know me at all. I'm afraid of death just like everyone else, but I grew used to the idea of it a very long time ago. I'm not under any illusions. I'm not complaining about fate, Triss. This is plain, cold calculation, statistics. No witcher has yet died of old age, lying in bed dictating his will. Not a single one. Ciri didn't surprise or frighten me. I know I'm going to die in some cave which stinks of carcasses, torn apart by a griffin, lamia, or manticore. But I don't want to die in a war, because they're not my wars. I'm surprised at you, she replied sharply. I'm surprised that you're saying this. Surprised by your lack of motivation, as you learnedly chose to describe your supercilious distance and indifference. You were at Sodden, Angren, and Trans River. You know what happened to Cintra, know what befell Queen Calanthe and many thousands of people there. You know the hell Ciri went through, know why she cries out at night, and I know too, because I was also there. I'm afraid of pain and death too, even more so now than I was then. I have good reason. As for motivation, it seems to me that back then I had just as little as you. Why should I, a magician, care about the fates of Sodden, Brugge, Cintra, or other kingdoms? The problems of having more or less competent rulers, the interests of merchants and barons. I was a magician. I too could have said it wasn't my war, that I could mix elixirs for the Nilfgaardians on the ruins of the world. But I stood on that hill next to Vilgefortz, next to Artur Terranova, next to Faircart, next to Enid Findabair and Philippa Eilhart, next to your Yennefer, next to those who no longer exist. Coral, Yoel, Vaniel. There was a moment when out of sheer terror I forgot all my spells except for one, and thanks to that spell I could have teleported myself from that horrific place back home to my tiny little tower in Maribor. There was a moment when I threw up from fear, when Yennefer and Coral held me up by the shoulders and hair. Stop! Please, stop! No, Geralt, I won't! After all, you want to know what happened there on the hill, so listen. There was a din and flames. There were flaming arrows and exploding balls of fire. There were screams and crashes, and I suddenly found myself on the ground on a pile of charred, smoking rags, and I realized that the pile of rags was Yoel, and that thing next to her, that awful thing, that trunk with no arms and no legs, which was screaming so horrifically, was Coral. And I thought the blood in which I was lying was Coral's blood. But it was my own. And then I saw what they had done to me, and I started to howl. Howl like a beaten dog, like a battered child. Leave me alone! Don't worry, I'm not going to cry. I'm not a little girl from a tiny tower in Maribor anymore. Damn it! I'm Triss Merigold, the 14th one, killed at Sodden. There are 14 graves at the foot of the obelisk on the hill, but only 13 bodies. You're amazed such a mistake could have been made? Most of the corpses were in hard-to-recognize pieces. No one identified them. The living were hard to account for, too. Of those who had known me well, Yennefer was the only one to survive, and Yennefer was blind. Others knew me fleetingly, and always recognized me by my beautiful hair. And I, damn it, didn't have it any more. Geralt held her closer. She no longer tried to push him away. They used the highest magics on us, she continued in a muted voice. Spells, elixirs, amulets, and artifacts. Nothing was left wanting for the wounded heroes of the hill. We were cured, patched up, our former appearances returned to us, our hair and sight restored. You can hardly see the marks. But I will never wear a plunging neckline again, Geralt. Never. The witches said nothing. Neither did Ciri, who had slipped into the hall without a sound, and stopped at the threshold, hunching her shoulders and folding her arms. So, the magician said after a while, don't talk to me about motivation. Before we stood on that hill, the chapter simply told us, that is what you have to do. Whose war was it? What were we defending there? The land? The borders? The people and their cottages? The interests of kings? The wizards' influence and income? Order against chaos? I don't know. But we defended it because that's what had to be done. And if the need arises, I'll stand on the hill again, because if I don't, it will make the sacrifices made the first time futile and unnecessary. I'll stand beside you, shouted Ciri shrilly. Just wait and see. I'll stand with you. Those Nilfgaardians are going to pay for my grandmother, pay for everything. I haven't forgotten. Be quiet, growled Lambert. Don't butt into grown-ups' conversations. Oh, sure. The girl stamped her foot, and in her eyes a green fire kindled. Why do you think I'm learning to fight with a sword? I want to kill him, that Black Knight from Sintra, with wings on his helmet, for what he did to me, for making me afraid. And I'm going to kill him. That's why I'm learning it. And therefore you'll stop learning, said Geralt, in a voice colder than the walls of Kaer Morhen. Until you understand what a sword is, and what purpose it serves in a witch's hand, you will not pick one up. You are not learning in order to kill and be killed. You are not learning to kill out of fear and hatred, but in order to save lives, your own and those of others. The girl bit her lip, shaking from agitation and anger. Understood? Ciri raised her head abruptly. No. Then you'll never understand. Get out. Get out. Get out. Ciri spun on her heel and stood still for a moment, undecided, as if waiting for something that could not happen. Then she ran swiftly up the stairs. They heard the door slam. Too severe, Wolf, said Vesemir. Much too severe. And you shouldn't have done it in Triss's presence. The emotional ties. Don't talk to me about emotions. I've had enough of all this talk about emotions. And why is that? The magician smiled derisively and coldly. Why, Geralt? Ciri is normal. She has normal feelings. She accepts emotions naturally, takes them for what they really are. You obviously don't understand, and are therefore surprised by them. It surprises and irritates you. The fact that someone can experience normal love, normal hatred, normal fear, pain and regret, normal joy and normal sadness. That it is coolness, distance and indifference which are considered abnormal. Oh, yes, Geralt. It annoys you. It annoys you so much that you are starting to think about Kaer Morhen's vaults, about the laboratorium, the dusty demijohns full of mutagenic poisons. Triss, called Vesemir, gazing at Geralt's face, suddenly grown pale. But the enchantress refused to be interrupted, and spoke faster and faster, louder and louder. Who do you want to deceive, Geralt? Me? Her? Or maybe yourself? Maybe you don't want to admit the truth, a truth everyone knows except you. Maybe you don't want to accept the fact that human emotions and feelings weren't killed in you by the elixirs and grasses. You killed them. You killed them yourself. But don't you dare kill them in the child. Silence, he shouted, leaping from the chair. Silence, Marigold. He turned away and lowered his arms defenselessly. Sorry, he said quietly. Forgive me, Triss. He made for the stairs quickly, but the enchantress was up in a flash and threw herself at him, embracing him. You are not leaving here alone, she whispered. I won't let you be alone. Not right now. They knew immediately where she had run to. Fine, wet snow had fallen that evening, and had covered the forecourt with a thin, impeccably white carpet. In it they saw her footsteps. Ciri was standing on the very summit of the ruined wall, as motionless as a statue. She was holding the sword above her right shoulder, the crossguard at eye level. The fingers of her left hand were lightly touching the pommel. On seeing them, the girl jumped, spun in a pirouette, and landed softly in an identical but reverse mirror position. Ciri, said the Witcher. "Come down, please." It seemed she hadn't heard him. She did not move, not even a muscle. Triss, however, saw the reflection of the moon thrown across her face by the blade glisten silver over a stream of tears.
"No one's going to take the sword away from me," she shouted. "No one! Not even you!"
"Come down," repeated Geralt. She tossed her head defiantly, and the next second leapt once more. A loose brick slipped beneath her foot with a grating sound. Ciri staggered, trying to find her balance, and failed. The Witcher jumped. Triss raised her hand, opening her mouth to utter a formula for levitation. She knew she couldn't do it in time. She knew that Geralt would not make it. It was impossible. Geralt did make it. He was forced down to the ground, thrown on his knees and back. He fell, but he did not let go of Ciri. The magician approached them slowly. She heard the girl whisper and sniff. Geralt, too, was whispering. She could not make out the words, but she understood their meaning. A warm wind howled in the crevices of the wall. The Witcher raised his head. "Spring," he said quietly.
"Yes,"
she acknowledged, swallowing.
"There is still snow in the passes, but in the valleys, it is already spring. Shall we leave, Geralt? You, Ciri, and I?"
"Yes, it is high time." Upriver we saw their towns, as delicate as if they were woven from the morning mist out of which they loomed. It seemed as if they would disappear a moment later, blown away on the wind which rippled the surface of the water. There were little palaces, white as nenuphar flowers. There were little towers, looking as though they were plaited out of ivy. There were bridges as airy as weeping willows. And there were other things for which we could find no word or name. Yet we already had names for everything which our eyes beheld in this new, reborn world. Suddenly, in the far recesses of our memories, we found the words for dragons and griffins, mermaids and nymphs, sylphs and dryads once more, for the white unicorns which drank from the river at dusk, inclining their slender necks towards the water. We named everything, and everything seemed to be close to our hearts, familiar to us, ours, apart from them. They, although so resembling us, were alien, so very alien that, for a long time, we could find no word for their strangeness. Hen Gediemdith, elves and humans. A good elf is a dead elf. Marshal Milan Rapinec. Chapter 4. The misfortune behaved in the eternal manner of misfortunes and hawks. It hung over them for some time, waiting for an appropriate moment before it attacked. It chose its moment when they had passed the few settlements on the Gwentlech and Upper Buina, past Ardcarach, and plunged into the forest below, deserted and intersected by gorges. Like a hawk striking, this misfortune's aim was true. It fell accurately upon its victim, and its victim was Triss. Initially it seemed nasty but not too serious, resembling an ordinary stomach upset. Geralt and Ciri discreetly tried to take no notice of the stops the enchantress's ailment necessitated. Triss, as pale as death, beaded with sweat and painfully contorted, tried to continue riding for several hours longer, but at about midday, and having spent an abnormally long time in the bushes by the road, she was no longer in any condition to sit on a saddle. Ciri tried to help her, but to no avail. The enchantress, unable to hold on to the horse's mane, slid down her mount's flank and collapsed to the ground. They picked her up and laid her on a cloak. Geralt unstrapped the saddlebags without a word, found a casket containing some magic elixirs, opened it, and cursed. All the phials were identical, and the mysterious signs on the seals meant nothing to him. "Which one, Triss?"
"None of them,"
she moaned, with both hands on her belly.
I can't take them."
"What? Why?"
"I'm sensitized."
"You? A magician?"
"I'm allergic."
She sobbed with helpless exasperation and despairing anger.
"I always have been. I can't tolerate elixirs. I can treat others with them, but can only treat myself with amulets."
"Where is the amulet?"
"I don't know."
She ground her teeth.
I must have left it in Kaer Morhen, or lost it.
Damn it. What are we going to do? Maybe you should cast a spell on yourself.
I've tried, and this is the result. I can't concentrate because of this cramp.
Don't cry.
Easy for you to say.
The Witcher got up, pulled his saddlebags from Roach's back, and began rummaging through them. Triss curled up, her face contracted and her lips twisted in a spasm of pain.
Ciri? Yes, Triss? Do you feel all right? No unusual sensations?
The girl shook her head.
Maybe it's food poisoning. What did I eat? But we all ate the same thing. Geralt, wash your hands. Make sure Ciri washes her hands.
Calm down. Drink this.
What is it?
Ordinary soothing herbs. There's next to no magic in them, so they shouldn't do you any harm, and they'll relieve the cramps.
Geralt, the cramps, they're nothing. But if I run a fever, it could be dysentery or paratyphoid.
Aren't you immune? Triss turned her head away without replying, bit her lip and curled up even tighter. The Witcher did not pursue the question. Having allowed her to rest for a while, they hauled the enchantress onto Roach's saddle. Geralt sat behind her, supporting her with both hands, while Ciri rode beside them, holding the reins and leading Triss's gelding. They did not even manage a mile. The enchantress kept falling from Geralt's hands. She could not stay in the saddle. Suddenly, she started trembling convulsively and instantly burned with a fever. The gastritis had grown worse. Geralt told himself that it was an allergic reaction to the traces of magic in his witch's elixir. He told himself that, but he did not believe it. "Oh, sir," said the sergeant, "you have not come at a good time. Indeed, you could not have arrived at a worse moment." The sergeant was right. Geralt could neither contest it nor argue. The fort guarding the bridge, where there would usually be 3 soldiers, a stable boy, a toll collector, and at most a few passers-by, was swarming with people. The Witcher counted over 30 lightly armed soldiers wearing the colours of Kaedwen, and a good 50 shield-bearers camping around the low palisade. Most of them were lying by campfires, in keeping with the old soldier's rule which dictates that you sleep when you can and get up when you're woken. Considerable activity could be seen through the thrown-open gates. There were a lot of people and horses inside the fort, too. At the top of the little leaning lookout tower, 2 soldiers were on duty, with their crossbows permanently at the ready. On the worn bridge, trampled by horses' hooves, 6 peasant carts and 2 merchant wagons were parked. In the enclosure, their heads lowered sadly over the mud and manure, stood umpteen unyoked oxen. "There was an assault on the fort last night." The sergeant anticipated his question. "We just got here in time with the relief troops, otherwise we'd have found nothing here but charred earth." "Who were your attackers? Bandits? Marauders?" The soldier shook his head, spat and looked at Ciri and Triss, huddled in the saddle. "Come inside," he said. "Your enchantress is going to fall out of her saddle any minute now. We already have some wounded men there. One more won't make much difference." In the yard, in an open roofed shelter, lay several people with their wounds dressed with bloodied bandages. A little further between the palisade fence and a wooden well with a sweep, Geralt made out 6 still bodies wrapped in sacking, from which only pairs of feet in worn, dirty boots protruded. "Lay her there by the wounded men." The soldier indicated the shelter. "Oh, sir, it truly is bad luck she's sick. A few of our men were hurt during the battle, and we wouldn't turn down a bit of magical assistance. When we pulled the arrow out of one of them, its head stuck in his guts. The lad will peter out by the morning. He'll peter out like anything. And the enchantress who could have saved him is tossing and turning with a fever and seeking help from us. A bad time, I say. A bad time." He broke off, seeing that the Witcher could not tear his eyes from the sacking-wrapped bodies. "2 guards from here, 2 of our relief troops, and 2 of the others," he said, pulling up a corner of the stiff material. "Take a look if you wish. Ciri, step away." "I want to see too." The girl leaned out around him, staring at the corpses with her mouth open. "Step away, please. Take care of Triss." Ciri huffed, unwilling, but obeyed. Geralt came closer. "Elves," he noted, not hiding his surprise. "Elves," the soldier confirmed. "Scoia'tael." "Who?" "Scoia'tael," repeated the soldier. "Forest bands." "Strange name." It means squirrels, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, sir, squirrels. That's what they call themselves in Elvish. Some say it's because sometimes they wear squirrel tails on their fur caps and hats. Others say it's because they live in the woods and eat nuts. They're getting more and more troublesome, I tell you. Geralt shook his head. The soldier covered the bodies again and wiped his hands on his tunic. Come, he said. There's no point standing here. I'll take you to the commandant. Our corporal will take care of your patient if he can. He knows how to sear and stitch wounds and set bones, so maybe he knows how to mix up medicines and what not too. He's a brainy chap, a mountain man. Come, Witcher. In the dim, smoky toll-collector's hut, a lively and noisy discussion was underway. A knight with closely cropped hair, wearing a habergeon and yellow surcoat, was shouting at two merchants and a grieve, watched by the toll-collector, who had an indifferent, rather gloomy expression, and whose head was wrapped in bandages. I said no! The knight thumped his fist on the rickety table, and stood up straight, adjusting the gorget across his chest. Until the patrols return, you're not going anywhere. You're not going to roam the highways. I's to be in Davon in 2 days, the grieve yelled, shoving a short-notched stick with a symbol branded into it under the knight's nose. I have a transport to lead. The bailiff's going to have me head if it be late. I'll complain to the voivode. Go ahead and complain, sneered the knight, but I advise you to line your breeches with straw before you do, because the voivode can do a mean bit of arse-kicking. But for the time being, I give the orders here. The voivode is far away, and your bailiff means no more to me than a heap of dung. Hey, Eunice, who are you bringing here, sergeant? Another merchant? No, answered the sergeant reluctantly. A witcher, sir. He goes by the name of Geralt of Rivia. To Geralt's astonishment, the knight gave a broad smile, approached, and held a hand out in greeting. Geralt of Rivia, he repeated, still smiling. I have heard about you, and not just from gossip and hearsay. What brings you here? Geralt explained what brought him there. The knight's smile faded. You have not come at a good time, or to a good place. We are at war here, Witcher. A band of Scoia'tael is doing the rounds, and there was a skirmish yesterday. I am waiting here for relief forces, and then we'll start a counterattack. You're fighting elves. Not just elves. Is it possible? Have you, or Witcher, not heard of the squirrels? No, I haven't. Where have you been these past 2 years? Beyond the seas? Here in Kaedwen, the Scoia'tael have made sure everybody's talking about them. They've seen to it only too well. The first bands appeared just after the war with Nilfgaard broke out. The cursed non-humans took advantage of our difficulties. We were fighting in the south, and they began a guerrilla campaign at our rear. They counted on the Nilfgaardians defeating us, started declaring it was the end of human rule, and there would be a return to the old order. Humans to the sea. That's their battle cry as they murder, burn, and plunder. It's your own fault and your own problem, the grieve commented glumly, tapping his thigh with the notched stick, a mark of his position. Yours and all the other noblemen and knights. You're the ones who oppressed the non-humans, would not allow them their way of life. So now you pay for it. Well, we've always moved goods this way, and no one stopped us. We didn't need an army. What's true is true, said one of the merchants who had been sitting silently on a bench. The squirrels are no fiercer than the bandits who used to roam these ways. And who did the elves take in hand first? The bandits. What do I care if it's a bandit or an elf who runs me through with an